amazing meeting. My name is Brian Thompson. I am the Outreach Coordinator for the James Randi Educational Foundation, and this is a workshop on supporting skepticism around the world. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things, but the main point of this workshop is to let you all know what you can do to support skeptics who are doing really good work in countries other than ours. It's something that we don't really talk about as much as we probably should. And these two gentlemen will provide some really good insight on that. First things first, though, if anybody has a question or comment, subtle rebuke, just feel free to speak up. We're going to have to repeat what you say so that it shows up on the recording. But I'm going to give you a couple of opportunities to ask questions about things that we've talked about. But if anything springs to mind, please just raise your hand or shout out or whatever it is your parents taught you to do. And also, if you see me looking at my phone, don't worry. I'm just really bored and I'm texting everybody I know. No, actually, I'm just keeping time to make sure we don't run out. So we can start by just introducing the panel. I'm going to let them sort of introduce themselves. So let's start with Leo.
Yeah. Well, my name is Leo Igwe. I'm from Nigeria. Currently, I'm in Germany doing some research work on witchcraft accusation in Africa. This is my first time in the US, and this is the first time I'm taking part in this amazing meeting. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing ideas and exchanging views with all of you, and broadening ties of friendship and partnership.
Hi, my name is Eran Segev. I'm the president of Australian Skeptics in New South Wales. This is my third term. I'm very happy to be here. Apart from being the president of Australian Skeptics, I'm also an occasional contributor to the Australian Skeptics magazine, The Skeptic, and to the Skeptic Zone podcast.
And you two know each other previously, right?
Yeah. We have met. Leo visited Australia recently, and he's been writing for our magazine for years, probably about 10 years now. Yeah. So.
You may have also seen Leo's writing on Randi.org. He blogs from time to time about the problem of witch burning in Africa and other parts of the world too. So let's start by talking about some of the accomplishments that you two have made in your home countries, Leo, Africa, and Iran in Australia. Leo, what are some of your accomplishments as a skeptic in Africa?
Yeah. Well,
and I know that Africa is not a country.
Yes. Well, we have accomplished a lot, yes, but not to the point that we can compare that with what we're doing here. So one of the things we have tried to do is to bring skeptics together. Yes, because the word skepticism cannot promote itself. Skeptics will do that. So what we have done, one of the things we have done is to organize meetings, conferences, and lectures to bring skeptics together and to bring to present skepticism to the Nigerian public. Second slide, please. Yeah. I'm sure that some of you are aware of this woman and her destructive campaign. Yeah. And I want to thank fellow skeptics in the US and around the world who drew attention to her coming, which never happened. So one of the things we also do is to draw local and international attention to the work of witch hunters, like Helen Opabio, and to get the world to understand the danger we face by allowing such people to continue to spread their poisonous message. Next slide, please. Yes, this is another of our programs, targeting, in quote, barren women. Barren women, I don't understand that very well, but that's what they use in Nigeria. These are vulnerable women. Yeah. She advised them to, if you want to know the sex, you want to have a child and things like that. So we shine the light on the activities and get the world to understand the kind of danger they pose to the world. Next. That's another one. There is this, that was Jingira that talked about the mimetic mechanism. You know, many churches are coming up now. Which churches are coming up? You know, so this one just organized this program that was in March this year. So we also try to focus on them. That's another church again. So we have, Helen's program is a kind of inspiring more churches. So we shine the light on what they're doing. Yeah. We also try to challenge the misconceptions about science. Yeah. In Africa, when you talk about science, they say science is Western. Yeah. And when you ask for maybe proof, they say, oh, you are thinking like a white man. As if it's only a white man or white men that think, you know, Africans don't think. So we try to tell them that science is science. It's not Western or Eastern or Northern or Southern. You know, science is science. Yeah, in the media, yeah, a couple of years ago, the police arrested a goat. In Nigeria, they arrested a goat and they brought the media people. What happened? Oh, some people, some vigilante group were pursuing some thieves and they turned to a goat. Yeah, yes, and they brought that. So that is it. Because some people will say, oh, they call it benign superstition or whatever. I'm still trying to find out which one is benign. You hang it up there, before you know it, somebody will do something absurd. It was a shame. Next. Yeah. So that's the details. Next. Now, in our justice system, in Nigeria, witchcraft accusation is illegal. Yeah, but because of the fact that these judges are enchanted, they are witchcraft believers, they will misinterpret the law. Instead of trying the accuser, the accused is tried and jailed. And this happened last year. And it got to a point, they said that the victim, in quote, the person who claimed to be bewitched, should lie on the floor of the court, and that the people who bewitched her should cross over to return their spirit. Yeah, spirit, in a law court. Yeah, so we try to shine a light on that. Yeah, we also have this problem. Yes, people claim that their genitals have disappeared. Yes, and it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And if people are accused, they could be killed. The person will be mobbed. Yeah. So it's not just in Nigeria, it's also in Ghana. We also have that situation. It spreads. Next slide, please. Now, this is a case of a woman in Lagos. She got some terrible beating because, you know, she was alleged to have maybe stolen somebody's or whatever. Good. So what we also do is to draw attention to the plight of victims in Nigeria, like children, innocent children who are accused of witchcraft. So we draw attention to their plight, the abuse, the suffering, the torture they go through. Women in Burkina Faso are displaced, condemned to what they call witch camps. They call them mangeuses d'âme, that is soul eaters. So if a child dies in a family, they say the woman has eaten the soul. And that's it, that's enough to drive the woman away. Also, we have problem with hunchbacks. Yes, in September last year, a woman was murdered. She was kidnapped from her home, taken to a bush, and they murdered her and removed the hunch. Yes, albinos are targeted because they believe that their body contains some magical substance which can make people rich and fortunate. Next. We also rescue and rehabilitate victims. This is a case of Esther. Esther was driven out, and she was in the market, and we came to the community and found out that a man has kidnapped Esther, around 8 years. This man is 40, having sex with a girl of around 8 years, around that. So we went to the man's house and rescued Esther. So that's one of the things we do. That's Esther on her way. on her way home. Esther is currently in a private shelter, a shelter managed by some organizations in the state where she's being taken care of. Now, we also, in Malawi, over 50 women were in jail when I visited Malawi 2-3 years ago. And I told them, look, we have to strike. Why? In Malawi, witchcraft accusation is illegal. And these people misinterpreted the law. So the law is on our side. So I told the local skeptics we have to strike. So we launched this campaign, and within 1 year, almost all the women except 3 are now in jail. There's only 3 that are still in jail. We are still trying to get them out. So these are our local activists with some of the women when they were released from jail in Malawi, thanks to the efforts of local skeptic activists and groups. Now, this is a problem in Malawi. This is a problem. That is magic plane. That is what they call magic plane in Malawi. So for those of you who want to go to Malawi, you have an alternative to fly this plane to Malawi. So there's a strong belief in magic plane, and those women are believed to have taken children with these magic planes to Zimbabwe and South Africa for initiation. And I tell them, this is rubbish, this is a toy, this is something for children, you know, for entertainment. It's not something to be taken seriously, but in Malawi it's another thing. It can send some people to jail based on some people's confession. Yeah, so this is a case of a woman, hunchback woman, who was, you know, murdered. What we are doing right now is to see what we can do to provide assistance to the family and use that platform to shine a light on the fact that you cannot make money using human body parts. Nigerians don't know that. They believe strongly you can make money using human body parts. Now, these are 3 kids she left behind. So we're trying to see what we can do. At least give them primary education or secondary education. So that's a little we can do. But friends, this is not enough. We don't even have the resources to keep supporting, to keep rehabilitating victims. So we do a lot of public enlightenment, because we know that if the superstition goes away, then I think we have, you know, we have less problem, you know, in terms of rehabilitating and supporting victims. That's the widower, the husband of the late woman. So we visited her. Sorry, we visited him. Now, in Nigeria, there's what they call killer numbers. Yes. At a particular time, they will tell you there's a killer number. So if somebody calls you with that phone, if you pick it, you die. Yes. So that caused a lot of problems. So the telephone companies, they had to issue statements and get the people to understand that there is no killer numbers. In Nigeria, they believe in killer numbers. So if you, and the killer numbers came only when mobile phone came, and they were not there before then. And you ask yourself, how? And you dial those numbers, nobody picks them. So there's a belief in killer numbers. Yes, the anti-vaccination campaign. Some Muslims came and just, I don't know how they got information and said, oh, the vaccination was a campaign to make Muslims infertile, depopulate them around the world, and people boycotted the vaccination program. And we had more of the disease again and all that. So it took some time, some intensive public enlightenment to get them back. But I'm not sure that many people are back. There are still people that are still staying away from the campaign. Yeah, HIV, prayer cure claims. Many prophets, TB Joshua, Chris Oyakilome, there are so many. Nigeria is, in fact, one of them is said to have predicted the death of the president of Malawi, you know. So they try to tell you that, oh, you cannot, they can give you some water, holy water or whatever, and if you take it, you are cured. So some people will leave their antiretroviral drugs and all that. So many people are dying because they are following the instructions of pastors. Yeah, yes, that is it. So in the media also, we get this kind of unbalanced reporting, you know, when they say somebody resurrected, you know, and all that. So they will not bring critical balance to the news and reporting. Yeah, so I think that's it for now. Thank you.
So Eran, what are you guys doing over in Australia?
Well, before I start, I just want to say that being active in a constitutional democracy like Australia presents really very few risks. And speaking after Leo is a little bit of a problem because our problems really pale into insignificance compared to the problems that he faces. And as you'll probably hear later, he and other skeptics in Africa do so at great personal risk, which we don't really take. So, you know, our achievements, I'm proud of our achievements, and it's probably important also to point out that these are not my personal achievements, these are the achievements of the organization. But we do so within the comfort of a Western-style constitutional democracy, and that's obviously very important. So I think probably the most important thing that we've achieved over the past few years is the progress in our fight against the anti-vaccination lobby. They've been very prominent in Australia. In particular regions where the population tends to be more new agey, they've taken a strong foothold, and vaccination rates have dropped quite significantly, and there have been deaths. There is a whooping cough epidemic for the past 3 years now in Australia, and there have been several deaths of babies who were either unvaccinated. Well, they were all unvaccinated. Some of them were unvaccinated because they were too young to be vaccinated, and some of them were not vaccinated because their parents chose the ill-advised choice of not vaccinating their children. There's several things that have happened with the fight against the anti-vaccination lobby, and the main one is that they've been discredited in the press. 2 or 3 years ago, Meryl Dorey, who's the head of the organization deceptively named Australian Vaccination Network, she constantly claims that it's a pro-choice organization, a tactic that's shared by anti-vaccination organizations the world over. She would be called in to talk about matters of vaccination against experts, against medical experts who know what vaccinations actually do and how they work and what the risks are, because there are risks, of course. But she would be called in. Journalists would use her services for information about vaccinations. That no longer happens by and large. The way the AVN, and Meryl Dorey in particular, are described in the press now is either just the anti-vaccination lobby, AVN, or the rabid anti-vaccination lobby, AVN. And obviously that's a major achievement because it means that they're not taken seriously. And of course there will still be people who will listen to their advice, but the population, the undecided population, young parents who don't have an opinion yet, looking for information, are no longer exposed to the AVN to the same degree that they were previously as a credible organization that provides credible information. In general, we have, I think over the past few years, have increased our media presence quite significantly. In line with the rest of the world, our skepticism has shifted in Australia. It's no longer so much about ghosts and ghouls and paranormal, and a lot more about things like quacks and alternatives to medicine. I don't like to call it alternative medicine. So we are called upon to comment on these issues, but of course there's also from time to time, you know, there was a couple of years ago, there was an Australian nun was declared as a saint by the Vatican. We gave lots of interviews about that, but we focused on the miracle side of it, which is of course what interests us, and the decisions of the Vatican about whether somebody is a saint or not are a lot less interesting to the skeptical audience. We also participate in regulatory and legal issues. So we help in advisory groups with regards to things to do with regulating alternative medicine. We are meeting with ministers and with parliamentary secretaries, and we talk to the organizations that regulate medicine. And we also, probably to a certain extent for effect, but there's an important point behind it. We also participate in regulatory affairs with regards to mainstream pharmaceuticals. So they don't like us too much either, because we do make sure that they're called to account when they do things like the company that manufactures and distributes Nurofen in Australia made claims that were completely unsubstantiated or could not be substantiated in their ads, and we participated in trying to call them to account. The problem is that the regulatory system in Australia is very weak, and they weren't even fined, unfortunately, but hopefully in the future they will be fined. They said that the Nurofen goes straight to the target of the pain. It's basically, it goes straight to your shoulder if your shoulder hurts. Yes. We assist other skeptics. The main story that I could tell, I won't tell it now because I'm giving a paper presentation on Sunday about this story. A doctor by the name of Ken Harvey, who was a serial complainant about all of these things that I've mentioned before, and he was sued for defamation, and we've provided a lot of assistance to him. And last, but probably not least, is the $100,000 challenge, similar to the $1 million challenge that the James Randi Educational Foundation run. We have a challenge, and it attracts all kinds of very interesting claims. The one that we constantly see is from diviners. They never go away. They're always very mild-mannered, polite folk who will be very puzzled when they don't succeed and then find an excuse as to why they didn't succeed. But that's something that happens from time to time. By the way, they're helped by the fact that if you dig for something like 2 or 3 meters anywhere in Australia that's not a mountain, you will find water. So one of the things we always ask them is, find us a place where there's no water. And no, we know how to find water. So these are some of our achievements of the past few years.
So Eran, in Australia, you have had a lot of success through the legislature passing laws against people who are using false advertising to sell pseudoscientific remedies and things like that. Leo, I wonder in Nigeria, for example, what do you think is the one issue that is the most likely to be solved through the legal system? Or is that not how these problems can be solved in a country like Nigeria?
Well, like I noted during my presentation, we can actually address the problem of witchcraft accusation legally. For instance, in Nigeria, witchcraft accusation is illegal. Yeah. Birth is illegal on the papers or in the statute book. Birth is legal in the minds of the people. So that's it. We have that contrast between what is written in the books and what people have in their minds. Yeah, so that was why we succeeded in Malawi, because we were able to use what is enshrined in the criminal code, to address the problem. So I think we can succeed, we can make progress in addressing the problem of witchcraft accusation legally. Yeah.
So
There's something I would like to add about that. In Australia, obviously the courts operate differently and probably less susceptible to be accountable to public opinion, I suppose. And not only that, prosecuting them would cost a lot more than $30,000, which means that nobody's ever been prosecuted under the laws that do allow the regulatory organizations to not just request, but actually demand withdrawal of claims.
So people who self-identify as skeptics, people like us who are here at TAM, are a tiny, tiny, tiny fraction of the population. I would think that to be successful in any campaign, whether it's a campaign against anti-vaxxers or a campaign against witch burning, you have to appeal to people who don't necessarily identify as skeptics. You have to appeal to their human nature, their empathy for others, things like that. So how do you think that people in, let's say in the United States, can affect the people who live in these countries where these horrible things are happening? What can we do to help out in any African country, or what can an American do to help out in Australia?
Okay. There are lots we can do from here. First of all, we can highlight or post information about these problems on our website or blogs. We can also do reports on these problems on our newsletters and get people informed, because they said information is power, knowledge is power. We can also petition governments, because, for instance, the United States has a ED program. They call it USAID. I don't know, but they have this ED programs. They give money to some countries in Ghana and Malawi for AIDS and all that. Yeah, for development projects. So for me, it's outrageous that America will be giving development aid to a country like Malawi when we are over 50 women we are in jail. What kind of assistance is that? Yeah, and America will be giving money to Ghana to support democracy and human rights when in the north thousands of women are in witch camps. Or to Burkina Faso. So it is important for us from here to draw the attention of the government, to the fact that, they should tie in assistance or developments or programs to address these problems into their development programs.
Yeah. I think that in this day and age, with the way the internet is, definitely in Australia, politicians pay attention to what's happening on the internet. I think it almost doesn't matter whether you are an Australian citizen or not. You can assist in local causes in Australia or anywhere else by rallying behind causes. So if something comes up on some blog or on Facebook, then putting in your comments, signing online petitions, these are things that can really help make a difference. If the politicians see that there's a lot of activity behind a specific cause, they will pay more attention. It's also important to contact local activists with important information, because we don't work in a vacuum. The kind of problems that we encounter are not different to the problems encountered in other places. And there's a good chance that whatever it is that we are working on at a certain point in time has been already either solved or worked on by somebody else somewhere else. And giving us some information about the kind of things that have been done in the past and have been successful in the past somewhere else can be extremely useful. There's also active participation. I'd like to tell a story related to Leo, and that is Leo. A couple of years ago now, that you were arrested on very serious charges.
That was last year.
It was a while ago. It was something like almost 2 years ago now. Leo was arrested on very serious false charges, I should point out. And the skeptical movement got behind him very, very strongly everywhere in the world. And within hours of him being arrested, there were people making phone calls to the local police, to local politicians, trying to get him released. I personally spent, due to time differences, it was 4 a.m. by the time I managed to speak to the Australian ambassador in Lagos and got the Australians involved. I had to lie in the process. I said that Leo actually works for Australian Skeptics because he's been writing for our magazine for a very long time. But the point was that they actually acted. They did call the local politicians, they called local police, and I don't know that it helped. I don't know that that's why Leo eventually got released, but it's the kind. I'm fairly sure that it at least had the potential to help. I'm fairly sure that when the local police chief gets calls from the UK, from the US, from Australia, from other countries, it does put pressure on them to, first of all, not. Our main concern was that Leo would be harmed during interrogation, or if he were just arrested, that's bad enough. But if he were actually tortured, or we didn't know what was going to happen. So putting that kind of pressure actually was significant help. And there's also some more mundane stuff, like collaborating on specific activities. A few months ago, I think, actually coming up to a year as well, we had one of the challenges to our $100,000 challenge. his claim was that he could send messages to another person who happens to live in New York. And we recruited New York skeptics to help us with that challenge, with testing that challenge. By the way, what happened was that it looks like not only the claims were imaginary, the other person may have been imaginary because she never showed up. But there were two New Yorkers standing out in the cold in a street corner waiting for an imaginary person. So that never went anywhere, but there was a collaboration over an extended period of time in designing that test and making it happen.
So we can make waves outside of our little in-group, but because we are part of an in-group, there's this problem that I think all skeptics have, where whenever we talk to a believer, we're seen as an outsider. In Africa, you talked about how it's seen as Western thought or white man thinking to be pro-science. In Australia, in the United States, in Great Britain, when we have this anti-vaccination problem, if you point somebody to, say, the Australian Skeptics website, if there's an article about how vaccines are safe, if you point someone who is a true believer that vaccines are not safe to that website, they're going to see the word skeptic and just dismiss everything, because we're part of this group of people who, that's what we do. It's our hobby. We get together and wear badges that say so. So how do you get beyond this perception that we are outsiders, not to be trusted?
Well, I think we face more challenges, particularly in Africa, because people view skepticism, atheism with suspicion. For instance, we appeared before a commission of inquiry on the problem of witchcraft accusation, and I was to testify. So Helen Opabio sent 4 lawyers to cross-examine me. And they spent much of the time telling the members of the commission, Leo is an atheist. He has an atheist agenda. He wants to make Nigerian children atheists. He wants to turn them to, that is it. So, so it's also a problem, yes. Because when you are challenging beliefs, paranormal beliefs, superstition, they think that you have an agenda to make people atheists. And I mean, what is wrong with that? We're born atheists after all. So, yeah, but like I used to tell people, actually I don't have an agenda. Yes. When I say don't touch your children in the name of witchcraft, I mean, is that an agenda? Yeah. So, so we have that problem. So what I do is this. Well, I don't talk about atheism. I don't even talk about God. I use this. I use the photos. I use the harm. I use the whatever, the dangers we run. I use the problems we have as society, the problems that are causing a society. I said, look at this problem. Like now, the woman who was the hunchback woman, I must tell you, I'm sure she was a Christian or a believer, but we have to go and assist people, whether they are skeptics or not, whether they are part of our movement or not. So we go all out to assist people just because we care. I think we care. We care not just when these beliefs are, that are promoted within us, but also out there in the world. So for me, I try to tell people that I promote what I call skepticism for humanity. For everybody. I try to go about my work by emphasizing on human benefit, and by not saying, oh, is this child an atheist child or skeptical child or whatever. Is that a child? Yes. Being tortured in the name of superstition? Yes. Then I move in. Yeah, that is it. So I think with that, people are finding out that, maybe some of these notions that maybe we are there or we are trying to send people to hell and all that, that is actually not the real issue. So that is it. I make humanity the emphasis when it comes to my skeptical activism.
For me, it's obviously, again, the situation is much simpler. The census results in Australia were published a few days ago, and there were 25% declared no religion. the church attendance is at something like 7%. So religion is not an issue at all in Australia. By the way, there were 2,500 Scientologists and 75,000 Jedi Knights. But there's, so religion is not an issue. And religion is, I do think that it's a particular problem because it's not ingrained just in personal beliefs. Society supports it, and it makes it more difficult to reach when you seem to be working against religion. But generally, I prefer not to target the true believers. I think true believers are beyond our help. What we have to make sure is that we reach those who are still looking out for information and make sure that the true believers don't get there first. So we try to minimize the effect of the organizations that try to promote woo, and simply provide information, correct information, point out the logical fallacies when there are such, and obviously usually there are, provide correct information, point to correct sources. So we try not to, for example, give medical information, but we point out to people where to get correct information. And we basically try to almost ignore, in terms of our own activity, ignore the true believers.
And one of the issues that we've had our eye on, yeah.
Two questions, if that's okay?
Sure.
I noticed for Leo, when you were talking about the witches coming in, the pastors coming in, hunting for witches and things like that, they're sponsored by churches. Where are those churches located? Where are they based?
So I'm going to repeat the question. He's asking where the churches that are sponsoring these witch hunts are based.
Yeah, they're based in Nigeria, they're based in the southern part, particularly, southern Nigeria.
So they're not based in like Canada or the United States?
No, what happens there is that there's a trend, we call it Pentecostal, the evangelical trend. They're not the Orthodox. And this trend is such that you can convert even your toilet to a church. Yes. You can start the church anywhere, in the garage, in the garden, anywhere. So you don't need to register, you don't need to go for any special training. You just need to see the vision and come out and tell people, I've seen the vision, and you go and start preaching. Anything in your head, good, bad, ugly. So it's some kind of a decentralized kind of thing. So that is it, and it's everywhere.
Oh, wait, you have one more question. I'm sorry.
The second question was about Meryl Dory. She started a new group in Australia called the Real Skeptics or something, Skeptics with a C, not a K. What are you guys doing for that?
Meryl Dory has started her own skeptics group with a C?
Not quite.
Now, well, first of all, let's get this out of the way here. What's the proper way to spell skeptic?
We spoke with a K.
So, okay.
When we talk about the skeptical movement, we spell it with a K.
Okay.
I think part of it is because we want to be part of the global skeptical movement, which is generally spelled with a K. Even the Brits spell it with a K when they talk about the movement. So
I don't know. I've seen some arguments about
yeah,
that.
yeah, you have arguments in Australia as well. Australians generally spell the word skeptic with a C. But yeah, for the purpose of our discussion, it's with a K. Meryl has opened, we knew about this a long time ago. She registered domain names, Australian Skeptics, AustralianSkeptics.com, AustralianSkeptics.org, the real AustralianSkeptics.com, stuff like that. Our website is skeptics.com.au, so she just did that. We're taking steps to remove it. You look at the site and it's very plainly not part of the skeptical movement. It's not like you could go in there and mistake it for something that belongs to the skeptical movement. But she, as is usual in her case, she uses misleading tactics. She doesn't care about what's true and not true. And I think the byline for the Real Australian Skeptics website is doubt everything, believe no one, or something like that.
I think that's the X-Files.
Yeah, she may be taking it from there. And obviously she believes anything that people like Andrew Wakefield says. So you know, it's very selective in her case. And I believe these websites will eventually be taken down, but it's taken time. And we're not particularly worried about it. I mean, we know roughly how much traffic they attract. It's not huge. But we are concerned about the fact that it comes up in searches because mostly because people respond actually. If people didn't respond, skeptics, good skeptics, didn't respond on those websites, then it probably wouldn't feature as high. But at the moment, it is creeping up in the search results, and that is something that is concerning us.
Leo, it was very interesting listening to you talk about, and I guess like most people here, I had never heard these things and never seen such terrible pictures. But you mentioned that the accusation of being a witch is a crime. Is that civil, criminal, or what is it? It's on the books, you say. And why don't, if it's on the books, then why is it not prosecuted like a crime? What's happening there?
Okay, I'm going to give you an example. I attended a workshop for judges, in the particular state where we have this problem. And during the workshop, one of them said, "Oh, I don't believe in child witchcraft, but I know there are witches and wizards." That's a justice, well paid, trained, and educated. He believes there are witches and wizards, but just because of the pressure, he didn't believe in child witchcraft. And another example, I have so many examples. People in positions to implement these laws are witchcraft believers. Yes. These laws, they have to be interpreted. Now, the people interpreting the laws are believers. So, what they do is to misinterpret the law. That is the case. And you know, when you have a ruling and somebody appeals, then, but now the whole thing has to be re-examined. But this is a situation where nobody appeals because apparently the ruling is in line with the popular belief.
Changing the law in Nigeria, how do you go about it?
Well, changing the law, I think it's through the parliament.
Yes.
Yeah. That is how they will do it. And maybe through, if there's a ruling, a major ruling, a kind of precedent. I'm not a lawyer, so, but I know that that's exactly how it could be done.
Would that be a better route to make it a criminal offense to accuse someone of being a witch?
No. It's an offense already. What we need to do is to educate the judges. The judges are superstitious. Yes. What they will see the crime, but they will interpret their belief. That's a problem. So what they need is education. They need some critical thinking. They need to come to town, and listen to presentations here. So that's what they need. That's all they need. The laws are there. Yes. But I must say this, that in Cameroon, Central Africa, and a few other countries, witchcraft accusation is not a crime. Witchcraft is recognized by law. So when somebody is accused, they will bring in a witch doctor to come and help the judge to identify and convict somebody. So countries like Cameroon and Central Africa are still in a deep shit in this case, and we still don't know how to help them for now.
Yes.
What proportion of the population in these countries would you say are witchcraft believers or practitioners or subscribe to this mode of thought?
Over 90.
Over 90?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
90% witchcraft believers?
Yes.
So does that come from organized religion, or does that come from just folklore and ingrained superstition?
Yeah, that's how we're brought up. Yes, because it starts from the family. First of all, the family, the school, the churches, and all that. Now, churches, mosques, they shape the beliefs of parents. So when parents give back to children, they teach them. When we are young, they made us to understand that people could turn to insects and come and suck blood in the night. And when there are accidents on the road, they say that these are blood-sucking demons, blood-sucking witches, they're at work. So many of us grow up confused. Yeah, for me it was a mental struggle, trying to find out when accident actually happens and when witches are involved. And this is a mental struggle many people don't go through in Africa because they just cannot afford to doubt what their parents have told them and what they are taught in schools and what they are told in churches and mosques. So the churches and mosques, they come later to reinforce what we receive, traditional training or information or upbringing we've received. And there is no space for skepticism, no space for skeptical rationality, even in the schools. So that is it.
Plaid shirt right there. Yeah.
I just wanted to discuss the fact that maybe most alarming part of this seems to be that the witch hunting movement is becoming increasingly international. That you're seeing cases of witch killings happening in London and other European cities as people from Africa bring their cultural beliefs with them.
So yeah, the witch burning, witch hunting is, do you think it's growing? I know it's not just a problem in Africa, but do you think it's something that's spreading?
Yeah, I think so. And that is why we have to be concerned. And that is why, you know, it might not be the best to think that, oh yeah, it's an African problem. It's an African problem. Let's deal with their problem. No, Africans are here too. Africans are living in the United States. And I want to tell you that my sister lives here. Yeah, another of my brother lives here. Yeah, and my sister believes in witchcraft. Yes, I must tell you. Now let me tell you this. She came back some years ago and told us that our family was under a curse. Yeah. Yeah. She came back from the United States to Africa to tell us that our family was under a curse. But because my family has some kind of skeptical orientation, we ignored her completely. Yeah. So because they wanted us to have a family prayer and invite a pastor who will come and break the curse. You may not understand, that's what is common in my own part of the world. Breaking the curse, you have to do some prayer and chanting as if, I don't know how the prayer turned to a knife and they will now, or something to hit the curse and the curse shatters and all that. So, but there is that funny belief, you get it? And she's been living here. So she has that belief there. So what I'm saying there is that we should not see this just as African thing. And the case of, that's Christy Bamu in the UK. Christy Bamu was tortured, killed in the UK by African family members. And I want to tell you, do not be surprised that such things will be taking place here. Because the people that invited Helen Opabio are witchcraft believers. Yes. And that they inform in one form or another also manifesting their beliefs. So, and that is why we have to be concerned. So it's not just an African thing, I think it's an international problem and it needs an international response.
A friend of mine went to Africa last year to assist one of the countries there with their legal system. And she reported back high levels of corruption, even in the legal system, where the women would be arrested and held without bail, and unless the families could come up with several months' worth of wages, they wouldn't be released. Does that tie into anything that you've seen? In other words, do you see anything coming out of, or any combination with this believers movement? Is it completely separate? Is there overlap, or are they just leveraging, perhaps leveraging the beliefs of the people in that regard?
He's asking how much of the prosecutions for these types of things in Africa have to do with the corruption of the legal system, payouts, things like that.
Police officers are Nigerians or Africans. And they are among the over 90%, I say, are witchcraft believers. Yes, and I must tell you that one of the trumped up charges brought against me was that I used juju. I went to somebody's house and spread juju there. Now, the people that wrote the accusation were police officers. If you move into a police station in Nigeria and you give some money to a police officer, they will write something that is I don't know how to say it. Something that you can use to go and arrest somebody. They will tell you how to coin it so that you can use it to arrest somebody. And one of them was that I used juju, that I broke into the person's house and scattered juju on the floor. So what I'm saying there is this, the whole place, even the legal system is there. And so corruption, yes, ties in the sense that you move in there, you give them money, they cook up something for you. Yeah, and they will use it to effect an arrest. And somebody's arrested for witchcraft, it's an arrest. It's a way to make money for police officers. Let me just tell you this. I was arrested, I was being detained, so I was waiting for them to really decide my fate. So one police officer said, "Oh, come on, I've not made any money today." I said, "Whoa, you make money individually here?" That is it. So that's the legal system we have here. It's a terrible one, and everything ties into it. Superstition, corruption, and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if the panel would comment on the role of the different kinds of media in trying to get the skeptical word out. In other words, contrast, say, TV with print, with the internet. What do you see going forward?
What are the most effective forms of media in Australia?
Well, the most effective is definitely television. So if you manage to get onto television, your impact is significantly heightened. We have, one of the things that have happened over the past few years is that we have been able to get in touch with some prominent media personalities, and we regularly feature on radio and television, much more so than in the past. In the past, again, we've always had a media profile, but it was always related to issues like ghosts. So it was always curiosity, the color stories that you have at the end of the news, rather than things that are more important to our day-to-day life. But I think an important part of that effect has been the use of the internet, and I would say Facebook and Twitter in particular. Twitter, I don't like Twitter because anybody who knows me knows that 140 characters, not enough for me. A day is often not enough for me. But I think it's been a fantastic means of spreading information that we once spread. And we have Rachel Dunlop. I don't think she's here. Find Dr. Rachel Dunlop. She's around at this conference. She's won the Shorty Award from Twitter for I think it was for the medical area, for spreading information about the medical field. And the way she's a trendsetter on Twitter, and she's been able to do some amazing stuff in terms of getting the word out there. And journalists pay attention. Journalists now, especially, everybody knows how it works now, where journalists really look for information to be able to quickly come out with something because the news cycle is so short, and they do pay attention. So if things trend on Twitter or appear regularly on Facebook, that makes a huge impact.
Yeah.
For us, let's say in Nigeria, and I can say in many parts of Africa, the media space is for sale. Yeah, so it's for, how do they say it in English? Is it the highest bidder or something, Yes. So if you can pay for it, fine, you have it. And the money is not in the hands of skeptics, as you know. Yeah, the money is in the hands of churches and the religious groups. Like in Nigeria, you don't dare turn on your television on Sunday, because it's one church after another, one church after another, and all that. So, yeah, we are having a hard time, competing with these people. Yeah, because they have a lot of money, to buy up the media spaces and tell us all sorts of rubbish. Yeah. So, but occasionally, we try to have some debates. Yeah, maybe once in a year or something like that. Radio, television, the same thing. Again, we have government radios and televisions. Now, the members of these churches are the directors in maybe government radios and televisions. They're the directors there. So that when you get there, I was to appear I was appearing on a television show, and before we started, they told us, look, don't criticize any religion. I mean, it was like, go back for me. Yes, because we were discussing issues on witchcraft, ritual killing. I don't know how one could say something like that without saying something critical of religion. Yeah. So before you move in there, the directors will tell you, don't criticize, don't attack any religion. And if you do it, they put you up the air. You just go off. So that is it. That's the kind of situation where we're living and all that. But internet is slowly coming in, and is helping. We are now meeting on Facebooks, and we're now having blogs, we're having websites and things like that. But it's slowly coming. But when it comes to others, they have gone to, is it satellite? In fact, some of Nigerian televangelists, they have satellite televisions, like TB Joshua and all that, and you watch it, it's just the same thing they do. Those drama, they just put it up there for the world to watch and all that. So that is it. It's challenging, but I think that there's some hope that we can, with time, we can utilize the media space.
Well, speaking of money, there's an issue that the JRAF has had its eye on for a little while now. It's something that I think the Merseyside skeptics in the UK have been dealing with. Everybody knows about shark finning. Sharks are caught, their fins are cut off. They used to be primarily made into soups, and then they were sold in certain Asian countries and all over the world, really, but it's primarily focused in Asia. It would be sold as sort of like a status symbol, like you were a rich, important person if you can afford shark fin soup. But now they've done so much shark fishing, price has gone down on shark fin soup. It's no longer a status symbol. And what they're doing now to make money off of shark fins is drying them out, chopping them up, and turning them into cancer cure medicines. So there's a myth that sharks can't get cancer, and so if you eat their fins, then you won't get cancer either. Which even if they couldn't get cancer, I don't think that's how that would work. So how much of this sort of thing, and this is something that's a big problem in China and Southeast Asia and things like this. This is not a religious issue. This seems to be entirely motivated by commerce. These are people peddling nonsense to make a profit. So all over the world, how much harm do you think is being caused by profiteers, and how much harm do you think is being caused by true believers?
I can't say that it's not something that I can really say affects Australia beyond this very strong link that Australia has with Asia, of course. Asia is our background, is our playing field. So obviously we're affected. There's a large Asian population in Australia, and there's issues around that. But there is nothing that I could say that's specific to Australia in that respect.
Yeah, I didn't understand the question.
Well, I'm asking if you think that there's more harm being caused by people that are cynically selling things to people, if they're selling products that don't work, or if they're coming from a religious motivation or some sort of other true believer motivation, and they really do think that they're doing good by burning witches, or doing good by prosecuting people for doing magic spells, things like that. I mean, how much do you think is genuine? How much do you think is profit motivated?
Yeah, well, I want to draw our attention to something. The so-called alternative medicine, or you call it alternative to medicine. Many people are coming from China with what they call Chinese medicine. And they are setting up clinics. And, they say they're treating Africans, and they collect money from them. Yeah, and that has not made any difference in our healthcare system. And there are so many people who are either marketing, I call it vegetable. Yeah, they give people vegetable, they say it's alternative medicine, or they give them fruits, or they give them just liquid, just something, just take something to drink, and after that you go home, and they collect money from them. So I think that there's so many people profiting from maybe marketing either something that is useless or giving people vitamins. I think they call them is it supplementary medicine? Complementary? They call them so many, yeah. They call them so many things, and sometimes you ask yourself, is that fruit or food and not medicine? So there are so many people there, but we still have more fundamental problems, and we still have very few hands to enlighten the population when it comes to these issues. So otherwise, there are so many people like that profiting as a result of the fact that many Africans do not even understand or draw distinctions between maybe what is medicine or medical or helpful and what is not.
I don't think there's a question anymore as to what the problem is. And I'm just wondering what the solution would be.
Yeah.
And I think perhaps one of the answers might be to tell us, since you come from that kind of background, surrounded by witchcraft and so on, how did you come out of it? How did you become a skeptic?
Yeah.
How did Leo become a skeptic? Is what she said.
Well, like I told them this in San Luis Obispo. I just came in from there. I told him, lately I have come to understand I'm not a normal human being. Yes. I think when I start with that, you can now understand me. Let me not just be describing in so many words. Let me run it in one line. I'm abnormal. Yes. Where people see normal, I see something different. Yes. Like now, I was born in a superstitious rural community. I was born in a village. I was not born in a hospital. Yes, I was born after the Civil War. There were no hospitals. All the hospitals had been bombed and shelled. There was none. So I was born in the home of a midwife and all that. And post-war life was filled with a lot. Persecution, fear, anxiety, desperation, and all that. And as I was growing up, what happened is as I was growing up, I had this questioning mind. Yes. People have all this belief in superstition and magic. They're still very poor. Yeah. My village was poor, it's still very poor. Nothing has changed. So the witchcraft belief or whatever they believe cannot change their lives. And they will tell us, oh, this man is a witch doctor and all that. Let me give you an example. I came back home, I told my father, I said, look, these guys, witch doctors, they're fraudsters. He said, look, my son, no. There's one man, he's very powerful. I said, can we go? He said, we should go. We went there. We went to the man's house. Lo and behold, he had a partial stroke. A powerful witch doctor had a partial stroke. Where all the magical powers, where were they? All the occult powers, where were they? And if you see how he struggled to stand up, I told my father, I said, are you telling me this man is powerful? He's dying. And of course, he's dead now. Do you see it? So I grew up with all these contradictions. I said, no, there's something fishy in here. They don't want to tell us. And I need to find out what that thing is. Now, from that community, where there were those contradictions, and I went to the seminary. I did most of my education in the Catholic seminaries, 4. And they told us that the priests were representing God. And I went there in the altar, they are telling us what God said. Come on. When the priest gets angry, his sermon will reflect in his sermon. And all that. And you see us having maybe some quarrel, politics going on and all that. So when I was there, I couldn't see God. I went to the seminary, I saw human beings. I didn't see God. So the thing is just not there. Yes. There's nothing to hold on to. And the best thing is for me to tell people, there's nothing there, please. If you go to a church, the church is empty. God is not there. If God is there, he should come out. If he can't come out, that means he's not there. If you go to a house and say, owner of this house, come out, and nobody comes out, definitely nobody is there, or the person is there is dead. You get it? So, I mean, that was the environment I grew up. And when I went to the seminary, I found out that Christianity just changed the code of traditional superstition and not the character. Jesus died on the cross, and what about it? And he saved us. How? He didn't save Africa, of course. We are still suffering the way we've been suffering over the years. It hasn't made any difference. And if it hasn't made any difference and people keep talking about it, you have to make people to understand that this thing is important, it's useless, it's harmful. Can we get it off the way so that we have a clearer view of our problems? That's it. That's the environment I grew up. Asking questions, challenging claims, and I must tell you, I find that more exciting. I'm happier doing that.
I just want to comment that I find your story a little bit depressing, because basically what you're saying is the answer is be born that way. but I don't think it's necessarily true. I think we have to remember that Europe was like this a few hundred years ago. This is not something that is, there's nothing different about Africa. The one thing that is different about Africa is that it is economically undeveloped and education is poor to a large extent. And I think the answer is economic development and education. You get that, you don't need to worry about the skepticism part, the less religion and more skepticism and critical thinking will come out of that. And of course, look, we know that it doesn't solve all the problems. We see this in places like the US and Australia. But by and large, I believe that these are the two things that we need to worry about. And of course, we have to also make our governments who support African countries with aid, just like Leo said earlier. We have to make sure that the aid there are strings attached, and they're the correct strings. We demand the conditions are the correct conditions for the aid that's supplied to these countries.
Yes, I was curious, as you're making your counterclaims in your individual countries, I guess in Australia, what are the conditions of the libel laws there as you're going about your work? And I guess more in Nigeria, are there blasphemy laws that you're concerned about?
Yeah.
So what are the laws affecting free speech in the countries?
Well, first of all, the Australian Constitution does not have a free speech clause. So there is no free speech in the way that it is in America. So we do have to... we are in a more restrictive situation. It's not terrible, but there are restrictions that don't exist here in terms of your ability to say things. I think by and large, first of all, defense and public interest are, truth and public interest are a defense. So we just make sure that we comment on things that are in the public interest, and we make sure that we tell the truth. And that usually isn't a problem. We have never been sued as an organization, but again, the story of Ken Harvey, which I will tell in more detail on Sunday, is that he was sued for talking about one of his complaints against a company that was selling a weight loss remedy, scare quotes, very important. There's things you can do about those things to make sure that it doesn't affect your activities. We made sure that he wasn't affected and sent a very important message to the community out there that skeptics can't be threatened by libel suits because we will not budge. But by and large, you just stick to the truth and make sure that things are in the public interest, and that's a solution in our situation.
Well, for us, like I said, yeah, we have the letter of the law, and we also have the people interpreting the law. So I have been sued. Yes, Helen Opabio sued me, and I think he asked for, I think, $3 billion. I don't know how many billions. Yeah, and I must tell you, it was my first time of seeing such an amount tied against my name. Yes, yeah. So she told the court that my activities were depriving her of her rights to believe in witchcraft, to believe in God, and go about her church activities and all that. Well, she lost. Yeah, she lost, and it was a good development for us, for the humanist movement, and for the skeptic movement. But you see, in Nigeria, we have the northern part has this Sharia. So where the blasphemy law is very strong, but the fanatics will not allow the courts to implement or to enforce the blasphemy laws. What do I mean by that? If you commit blasphemy before it gets to the court, you are killed. Yes. So, and nothing happens. Nothing happens. When I say you commit blasphemy, just excuse me for that. You know, nobody actually commits that. You know, so even if you commit it, it doesn't mean anything. So, what happened is that, particularly, there was a case of a woman in 2008. They were conducting an exam, you know, and Islamic studies exam, and one of the pupils came in with a copy of the Quran. And she was angry. She took the Quran and just kept it by the side, maybe dropped it on the floor. They said it was blasphemy. Yeah. And it didn't get to the court. So they went and mobilized, and the pupils lynched their teacher. Yes, the killer. So that's the kind of situation where we stay. So it doesn't even get to the court. It doesn't get to the court. In 1996, a Southern Christian was beheaded by fanatics because they detained him at a police station, but they broke into the police station, took him out there and beheaded him and put his head on a spike and paraded it on the streets. That is Nigeria. And that's a blasphemy law and all that. So that's the kind of situation where we find ourselves there.
Yeah, one of the counter responses of the believers is that the skeptics are interfering with their financial livelihood. So that could be separate, I would think, from their belief system. Have any of you encountered that as a reason to go after, say, a local skeptic?
Yeah, have you ever encountered people who claim that you're affecting their financial livelihood with your skepticism?
Friends, it's all about money. Yes, I want to tell you, it's not all about witches or wizards, whether they live there or not. It's all about money. Yes. I'm going to show some posters after, and I will show you the advertisement Helen Opabio had, prayer books against witchcraft. If you need to have some prayers against witchcraft, she has books, and she'll tell you to subscribe. She has films. You are possessed by witchcraft, by demons, and I have the power to deliver you. Come to my church. Yeah. It's all about money. She's angry with me because she knows that immediately people stop believing in witchcraft, her church will be empty. And there'll be no money in her pocket. That is it. So that's the simple answer I will give to that.
We don't have that problem at all, because I think just part of the Australian culture is that if somebody made that claim, they would be ridiculed in public. It would be a very, very bad step for anyone to say, by asking for evidence, you're ruining my livelihood. That would be a very bad move.
Sarah, on the end there, in the blue shirt.
It seems like part of the issue in Africa, not necessarily among the big people promoting this stuff, but among the general population, is what you said at the beginning, this, well, science is a white thing, and so it's bad. And I realize that the way to combat that is mostly through just education, but is there anything specifically that you can do with that education? Like, are there any specific methods that you're trying to use to combat that, no, there is no such thing as white science and black science and anything in between. There is just science.
How do you combat this aversion to white Westernism?
It's by combating it, by challenging it. I don't think that there is any other thing we can do but to just go out there and challenge it. When I was doing a master's program, I was taking this course on philosophy of science. And my lecturer, a doctor in philosophy, was telling us about the African scientific way of curing bone problems. Do you know the way? He said that the way is that if you have a bone problem, you have a fracture or something, You now get a chicken, you break the leg of the chicken, and keep the chicken, softened of course, by the side. And when that of the chicken, the fracture of the chicken, when it heals, your own will heal. What's the connection? What's the connection? I mean, number one, we don't have the same constituent. My own is bigger. My body is bigger than that of the chicken. I don't know how many times is it. And someone will tell you that that is African science. Rubbish. I stood up, I challenged him. I told him, this is nonsense. You get it? And when you say it, they will tell you, oh, you are not proud of your African identity. I'm not proud of African nonsense. I'm not proud of African superstitions, for goodness sake. Tell me something better. So that is it. I don't think there's any way. Because the so-called scholars and intellectuals, they are the one promoting it. You know, when you say, oh, Western technology, they want to say also African technology. When you say, oh, Western medicine, they also want to say African medicine, even though it's poison. Look at it. Or vegetable. Or something that has no therapeutic value. You see it? So that is it. So I don't think there is a particular way to do it. But that we have to keep challenging these things, and we have to go to these schools, have skeptic groups, have students groups, you know, plant the seed of skepticism in our schools so that the whole thing will fade away. That is just it. You know, I don't think there's any other way. But we have to get right in there and tell them this is a problem. And we get them to draw instances of that, and we keep engaging the situation, maybe till it goes away.
And it's also worth pointing out too that this isn't an idea that's limited to non-Western countries. In Western countries, Westernized countries, it's a problem with people motivated against real science, real medicine, because it's Western. There's this kind of idea that if it's traditional, if it's Eastern, it's been around longer, it's better. Yeah. You're not feeding into the pharmaceutical companies. Like, how does that I'm sure that's a problem in Australia. This paranoia about pharmaceutical companies. And some of it some of it's justified, I would imagine.
I think, well, the pharmaceutical companies are companies trying to make a buck, and they will do whatever they can to make a buck. It's, by the way, part of the, I would say, the irony of the legal system, it's the same in the US, is that the directors are not judged on their ethical work, they're judged on shareholder outcomes. That's what they're judged by legally. That's what they're supposed to do. So obviously, there's no ethical boundaries, and yes, absolutely, it's not something that's limited to quackery. But yes, there is that suspicion against the major pharmaceuticals that comes out of that. But I think it is, you know, we all like nature, especially now that we all live in cities, and you know, there's a lot of cement and bitumen around us. We like nature, and we like trees and all that, and somehow it looks like something that is more natural is better. And the natural, you know, we have a fallacy now named after that, you know, the natural fallacy. I don't know that it's any worse in Australia, but it's definitely not better. We have those claims all the time. I think the main one at the moment is, I think most people in Australia will accept that homeopathy is gobbledygook and doesn't mean anything, but everybody thinks, that a lot of people, most people I would say, think that there is plenty of evidence for acupuncture. People make that claim. People who are on our side almost, I would say, tend to come and say that there is evidence for acupuncture being helpful, and we know that that's actually not true. So yes, there is definitely that problem.
And if anybody who's been outside yesterday, knows that nature is trying to kill us. So yeah, I wouldn't put much stock in nature. So a couple questions. Yeah, way in the back.
An amazing incentive. When you speak of some of the quick reactions in which beheadings, which is probably one of the more horrific things that we can think of happening to a person we know or love, or even somebody we don't, what do you see as the antidote to that method of controlling the people of your country when this is occurring under the name of the Quran and others. Is there anything that you can do to get around the thought that it's such a fear-inducing thing and you've lost your life? I mean, it is so one-sided that it seems this is something that's always coming up in the news. It's something that controls women, it controls those who are poor. But how do you counteract that? Does it just wait till the Quran goes away?
And how do you counteract this idea that if you don't believe in these things, then you're going to hell?
Hell? Yeah, I mean, there's no argument here. There's no hell. Yes, I know that there are people that try to use that to maybe intimidate. I don't know actually what they want to achieve, but I laugh at it, you know, when people talk about hell. Number one, there's no hell, so there's no argument. Can you tell me something else? You know, if there's something else you have to tell me, just tell me that I'm going to hell. It does not, I don't engage in that argument. I just laugh. If you tell me things like that, I just laugh. That's the way I take it, you know. And it also means that the person needs some help. Yeah, the person needs some help.
So do you think that that's one way to combat these ideas, is just to have more and more people laughing at it?
Yes, if you, it all depends on the environment. If you laugh in the midst of fanatics, that might be the last laugh. Yeah, because there are really, really people who want to go to heaven. You know, yes, there are people who want to go to heaven by killing you. Yeah, and when they think that you are making fun of their belief, they can really, do something terrible. So I try to monitor the environment before I laugh. Yeah, and I must tell you that the best place I laugh is a place like this. Yes, every other place I laugh with caution. Now, let me give you this example. When I was traveling to Australia, we were about, I think we were around Perth, trying to heading towards Sydney. So I was tired, so I came out to stretch my legs. Now at the back of the aircraft, moving in this way, I think I imagine. At the back of the aircraft, I just came in, and I met somebody, a Muslim here, praying. He was just, the way they pray, they face somewhere, and they would be, he was praying. So I paused. I almost started laughing, but I suppressed the laughter, So I now laughed when I met skeptics in Australia. I told them the story. Because I was asking myself, come on, this man, how does he know that he's facing Mecca? In a Boeing 7, moving into Australia this way, and somebody's at the back facing the river or something, because I know Australia is surrounded by the river. Look at it. So, but you don't tell him, and you don't laugh at him. Yeah. So that is it. So, but it's also important that you go to another environment and make people to understand that sometimes, or in most cases, Muslims are facing the wrong way when they're praying. And that Allah is not just hearing the prayer. So you can see a lot of wasted prayers and wasted exercise, they do every time. So that is it. So sometimes laughing at them is good, but I laugh with caution.
Yeah, well, I've never been threatened with violence, but the worst I think that's happened is Meryl Dorey calling us brown shirts for not believing what she says. But humor in general, see, especially if you're in an interview situation, television works really well in that respect, is a little smirk, just seeming to ridicule the idea. You don't have to actually say anything. Just look like you're amused by the claims. It has more effect than 1,000 words. It's much better than countering the claim. You just look amused by the claim.
I have to say that mentioning facing Mecca, I don't know if anybody else has read Mary Roach's book, Packing for Mars, about the space program. Apparently this became an issue when people started going into space. If you're a Muslim in space, what do you do? And you face...
It's that blue dot over there.
You face Earth and hope for the best. There's also this, I can't remember the name of it, but there's this, if somebody can track it down or somebody knows what this is, there's this handbook, this old Vatican handbook that covers like every possible adverse circumstance for communion, for every kind of ritual that a priest would face. It's a handbook for a priest. And so it talks about, like, you know, you're supposed to deliver the communion waiver with one particular arm. What if you're a priest that doesn't have this particular arm? What if someone takes communion and then immediately vomits it up? What do you do? It's just like this like 800-page book about every possible situation. I always like contingency plans. Logistics nerd. Well, before we run out of time, I want to talk about the practicalities, like brass tacks of what people can do to help out fellow skeptics in other countries. Is it a matter of throwing money at the problem? And if so, who do you think people should give money to? Is it a matter of spreading awareness somehow, or of adding your name to the global conversation in some way? I just want to get both of your thoughts on that. Just practically speaking, today, when someone leaves this room, what could they do to help out in Africa? What could they do to help their fellow skeptics in Australia?
Okay. Now, what one can do depends on what one is doing, what one is good at, or what one is in the position to do. Yes. There are people that work for organizations. There are people that work for universities, aid agencies, human rights groups. Now, for those who work for human rights groups, they should make this part of their agenda. I think you would be doing a lot of good to my continent. Because they don't. They try to avoid it. You know, we don't want to offend Africans. Please, I don't like hearing that. They'll tell you, yes, this is African culture. This is not our culture. Torturing children in the name of witchcraft is not our culture. So if you are part of the organizations, bring this, make this part of your mission in Africa, part of your programs in Africa. You'll be doing a lot of good to us. So it must not be maybe channeling money and funds to skeptical groups. Again, we need training. Like I told you here now, in Nigeria, what the judges need is training and nothing more. The laws are there. They misinterpret them. We need people to train them. We also have activists on ground who are doing some work. Of course, they need support. You can also highlight what they're doing on your website and get the world to know. Because I think that many people around the world do not actually know what's going on. They don't know the tragic nature of things there. So help us inform them. Then if you can raise money, good. Sometimes we use the money to support victims, but we don't just support victims. We use that as a platform to send a strong message. This is nonsense. It has to stop. And again, I must also say this. I'm doing some research at a university in Germany, and I'm looking for scholarship. And the university gave me 1-year scholarship, and it's expiring in September. And we're struggling now to get some funding, maybe for 6 months or 1 year or 3 years, as the case may be. And one day my supervisor called me. He said, look, Leo, here in Germany we have the DAD, the Dutch Funding Agency for Scholarship. We have the CAD, Catholic Funding Agency. He said, if you have not outed yourself, I would have advised you to apply to CAD. Yeah. So this is what happened. So, and that's the same thing. Many people, like now my father said, I became a Catholic because that was the only way for me to receive education. You see people, you know, professing religion as a result of some basic needs. Yeah, and all that. So we also have to find a way to raise money and fund research programs in universities so that a skeptic does not become a believer because he needs money to fund a research program. Yes. So if you have contacts or those who can help me for 6 months, 1 year, I don't want to be a Catholic, please, because I want to fund my research. I want to be free. I want to be free. I want to remain a skeptic. I want to question any ideas. I don't want to go to church, because I have Catholic funding assistance. So, and I know that I'm not just the only person in these shoes. There's so many people out there, who face this dilemma. So let us know and make it a priority and provide some funding programs for skeptics and free thinkers, not just in Africa, but also here in the United States.
Give you money to Leo. Australian skeptics doing okay. We can afford to be volunteers by and large. There's also some funding available to us, and we definitely don't need financial support. Although if somebody has a really large bequest or something, then yeah, we won't say no. But really, if in terms of financial support, I think the causes like skepticism and critical thinking in Africa that are probably more important to support in that respect. As I mentioned earlier, I think rallying behind causes in other countries, Australia in particular, is always a good thing. There's no distinction nowadays between support that comes from within Australia and support that comes from elsewhere when it's online. And actually, one thing you can do is come to Australia and participate in our activities and our events. We have a very large. Is that a good time to plug?
Yes.
Okay, I'll plug. We have a very large conference at the first 2 days of December in Victoria. Victorian skeptics are organizing it. There's still tickets left. James Randi will be there. DJ Grothe will be there. Brian Thompson?
I don't know who that is.
Yeah. Brian Thompson will be there.
Oh, that's me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Brian Thompson will be there. It'll be, they've got a really great program, and Melbourne is a very nice place to visit as well. So you can go to the just look up Victorian Skeptics online and register for that conference and visit Australia at the same time. Don Hyatt, I think, is here. Don, can you stand up for a sec? So Don is the convener.
Look for the t-shirt.
Yeah, look for that t-shirt. It's the convention t-shirt.
The kangaroo skin cats.
Okay, this is a kangaroo skin hat. Look him up.
Don't worry, the kangaroo hat is coming.
Yeah, so find Don and register for the conference. And I think I'm not just saying that I said it's a plug, but it's not. It's about participation. It's about creating those contacts. It's about being part of the movement, seeing what people work like in other countries, being a participant in the activities of people in other groups. Just like we come here, there's usually a 30, 40, 50 strong contingent from Australia at TAM. We participate in conferences in other countries as well. I think it's very important to have that global feel to it, to come to other countries and see how they operate.
I think we have time for maybe a couple more questions. You, sir, near the back, the jacket on.
Both gentlemen, just your thoughts on the mainstream media here in the U.S. Are we helping or hindering skepticism, critical thinking?
The mainstream media helping or hindering?
Hindering.
In the US.
Oh, in the U.S.
How much U.S. entertainment gets exported to your various areas?
Lots. We have, we have a lot of American television program on Australian television. By and large, I think the shows that we get are not shows. We get Medium and Ghost. What are they called? The Ghost Hunters. Yeah. So what was that? So we get that. It's mostly most of the stuff is on cable, so it's exposed to a very small minority of the population. I don't think that in terms of skepticism we are affected so much, so the media doesn't either help or hinder in that respect. But the Australian media does have a detrimental effect. We have the two main tabloid TV shows, the two shows competing for the 6 to 7 p.m. slot on television. One's called Today Tonight, the other one's called The Current Affair, and they sound like news shows. Nothing could be further from the truth. They, I can't remember exactly, but Rachel once said that you have bras at least once a month, weight loss twice a month. There's a recipe, and they're commercial, and they don't hesitate at all to promote quackery of various kinds. In fact, we landed some successes actually through that, because they were going to promote on the show called Today Tonight, which is quite prominent. They were trying to promote the power balance bracelet, and they called us to ask whether we wanted to comment. And Richard said, I will, Richard Saunders, and he went there and actually debunked it on air. And that was the start of the downfall of power balance bracelets in Australia, which I believe precipitated a global collapse, which was obviously a good thing. So we can actually use that, the fact that the media is so interested in various forms of quackery, to our advantage, but most of the time we don't get the opportunity. So by and large, I would say the media hinders rather than helps.
Yeah, for me, I think televangelism, that is what is really doing a lot of damage. And I think that many of them are just imitations they get from here. Yeah, many of our evangelists, having these satellite televisions or satellite broadcast of faith healing, prayers. You can now send your prayer request, via websites or whatever and all that. So, and many of them, are really being assisted by their American counterparts. So, I think that's in terms of the effect the American media is having, when it comes to superstition, paranormal beliefs out there in Africa.
One more question? TAM Manager?
Someone wants to give money to your group. How do they do that? Where do they go?
Someone give money to your groups that you support in Africa.
How can they find you?
Okay. How you can find me? Just put my name on the Google. Okay, great. Well, it all depends. You see, like Brad said initially, Africa is a continent. Yeah. So and we have groups in Malawi, we have in Uganda, we have in Nigeria, and all that. And we have, for instance, each group has different projects. Like the project to assist the victims of ritual killing, witchcraft abuse, and all that. So most times we always want something tailored, meant for this project in this country, and all that. So that helps us. So if you want to support what we're doing in Malawi, we'll just link you up with our Malawi counterpart. Yes. Uganda or Nigeria, ritual killing in Nigeria, we'll link you up to somebody, and the person will now be the person, who they want to coordinate it. So it all depends on what you want, but if you can contact me. My email address is I have 2 email addresses, and skeptic Leo. And skeptic Leo is in my email address. Yeah, I want people to know it's there. When you are writing me, you know whom you're writing. So and skepticleo@yahoo.com. That is my email address. The other one is humanistleo@hotmail.com. These are 2 email addresses I have. With that, you can contact me and just let me know specifically, what you want the money, where you want it channeled. If you say, use it for whatever you want, then we might take a decision. We now inform you, this is where it's going, and for this, and for that, and for that. So that's the only thing I can say now.
All right. Well, I want to thank you both for being on this workshop. Leo Igwe. What was your name? Eran Segev. And if you want to find both of these gentlemen around TAM, they will be available, I would imagine. Yeah. And thanks for coming, everybody. amazing meeting. My name is Brian Thompson. I am the Outreach Coordinator for the James Randi Educational Foundation, and this is a workshop on supporting skepticism around the world. We're going to be talking about a lot of different things, but the main point of this workshop is to let you all know what you can do to support skeptics who are doing really good work in countries other than ours. It's something that we don't really talk about as much as we probably should, and these two gentlemen will provide some really good insight on that. First things first, though, if anybody has a question or comment, subtle rebuke, just feel free to speak up. We're going to have to repeat what you say so that it shows up on the recording, but I'm going to give you a couple of opportunities to ask questions about things that we've talked about, but if anything springs to mind, please just raise your hand or shout out or whatever it is your parents taught you to do. And also, if you see me looking at my phone, don't worry. I'm just really bored and I'm texting everybody I know. No, actually, I'm just keeping time to make sure we don't run out. So we can start by just introducing the panel. I'm going to let them sort of introduce themselves. So let's start with Leo.
Yeah. Well, my name is Leo Igwe. I'm from Nigeria. Currently, I'm in Germany doing some research work on witchcraft accusation in Africa. This is my first time in the US, and this is the first time I'm taking part in this amazing meeting. I'm so excited to be here, and I'm looking forward to sharing ideas and exchanging views with all of you, and broadening ties of friendship and partnership.
Hi, my name is Eran Segev. I'm the president of Australian Skeptics in New South Wales. This is my third term. I'm very happy to be here. Apart from being the president of Australian Skeptics, I'm also an occasional contributor to the Australian Skeptics magazine, The Skeptic, and to the Skeptic Zone podcast.
And you two know each other previously, right?
Yeah. We've met. Leo visited Australia recently, and he's been writing for our magazine for years, probably about 10 years now. Yeah. So.
You may have also seen Leo's writing on randi.org. He blogs from time to time about the problem of witch burning in Africa and other parts of the world too. So let's start by talking about some of the accomplishments that you two have made in your home countries, Leo, Africa, and Eran in Australia. Leo, what are some of your accomplishments as a skeptic in Africa?
Yeah.
Well, and I know that Africa is not a country.
Yes. Well, we have accomplished a lot, yes, but not to the point that we can compare that with what you're doing here. So one of the things we have tried to do is to bring skeptics together. Yes, because the word skepticism cannot promote itself. Skeptics will do that. So what we have done, one of the things we have done is to organize meetings, conferences, and lectures to bring skeptics together and to present skepticism to the Nigerian public. Second slide, please. Yeah, I'm sure that some of you are aware of this woman and her destructive campaign. Yeah. And I want to thank fellow skeptics in the US and around the world who drew attention to her coming, which never happened. So one of the things we also do is to draw local and international attention to the work of witch hunters like Helen Opabio, and to get the world to understand the danger we face by allowing such people to continue to spread their poisonous message. Next slide, please. Yes, this is another of our programs, targeting, in quote, barren women. Barren women, I don't understand that very well, but that's what they use in Nigeria. These are vulnerable women. Yeah, she advised them to, if you want to know the sex, you want to have a child and things like that. So we shine the light on the activities and get the world to understand the kind of danger they pose to the world. Next. That's another one. There is this, that was Jingira that talked about the mimetic mechanism. You know, many churches are coming up now. Witch hunting churches are coming up. If people are accused, they could be killed. The person will be mobbed. Yeah. So it's not just in Nigeria, it's also in Ghana. We also have that situation. It spreads. Next slide, please. Now, this is a case of a woman in Lagos. She got some terrible beating because, you know, she was alleged to have maybe stolen somebody's or whatever. Good. So what we also do is to draw attention to the plight of victims in Nigeria, like children, innocent children who are accused of witchcraft. So we draw attention to their plight, the abuse, the suffering, the torture they go through. Women in Burkina Faso are displaced, condemned to what they call witch camps. They call them mangeuses d'âme, that is soul eaters. So if a child dies in a family, they say the woman has eaten the soul. And that's it, that's enough to drive the woman away. Also, we have problem with hunchbacks. Yes, in September last year, a woman was murdered. She was kidnapped from her home, taken to a bush, and they murdered her and removed the hunch. Yes, albinos are targeted because they believe that their body contains some magical substance which can make people rich and fortunate. Next. We also rescue and rehabilitate victims. This is a case of Esther. Esther was driven out, and she was in the market, and we came to the community and found out that a man has kidnapped Esther, around 8 years. This man is 40, having sex with a girl of around 8 years, around that. So we went to the man's house and rescued Esther. So that's one of the things we do. That's Esther on her way home. Esther is currently in a private shelter, a shelter managed by some organizations in the state where she's being taken care of. Now, we also, in Malawi, over 50 women were in jail when I visited Malawi 2-3 years ago. And I told them, look, we have to strike. Why? In Malawi, witchcraft accusation is illegal. And these people misinterpreted the law. So the law is on our side. So I told the local skeptics we have to strike. So we launched this campaign, and within 1 year, almost all the women except 3 are now in jail. There's only 3 that are still in jail. We are still trying to get them out. So these are our local activists with some of the women when they were released from jail in Malawi, thanks to the efforts of local skeptic activists and groups. Now, this is a problem in Malawi. This is a problem. That is magic plane. That is what they call magic plane in Malawi. So for those of you who want to go to Malawi, you have an alternative to fly this plane to Malawi. So there's a strong belief in magic plane, and those women are believed to have taken children with these magic planes to Zimbabwe and South Africa for initiation. And I tell them, this is rubbish, this is a toy, this is something for children, you know, for entertainment. It's not something to be taken seriously, but in Malawi it's another thing. It can send some people to jail based on some people's confession. Yeah, so this is a case of a woman, hunchback woman, who was, murdered. What we are doing right now is to see what we can do to provide assistance to the family and use that platform to shine a light on the fact that you cannot make money using human body parts. Nigerians don't know that. They believe strongly you can make money using human body parts. Now, these are 3 kids she left behind. So we're trying to see what we can do. At least give them primary education or secondary education. So that's a little we can do. But friends, this is not enough. We don't even have the resources to keep supporting, to keep rehabilitating victims. So we do a lot of public enlightenment, because we know that if the superstition goes away, then I think we have less problem, in terms of rehabilitating and supporting victims. That's the widower, the husband of the late woman. So we visited her. We visited him. Now, in Nigeria, there's what they call killer numbers. Yes. At a particular time, they will tell you there's a killer number. So if somebody calls you with that phone, if you pick it, you die. Yes. So that caused a lot of problems. So the telephone companies, they had to issue statements and get the people to understand that there is no killer numbers. In Nigeria, they believe in killer numbers. So and the killer numbers came only when mobile phone came, and they were not there before then. And you ask yourself, how? And you dial those numbers, nobody picks them. So there's a belief in killer numbers. Yes, the anti-vaccination campaign. Some Muslims came and just, I don't know how they got information and said, oh, the vaccination was a campaign to make Muslims infertile, depopulate them around the world, and people boycotted the vaccination program. And we had more. So this one just organized this program. That was in March this year. So we also try to focus on them. That's another church again. So we have, Helen's program is a kind of inspiring more churches. So we shine the light on what they're doing. Yeah. We also try to challenge the misconceptions about science. Yeah. In Africa, when you talk about science, they say science is Western. Yeah. And when you ask for maybe proof, they say, oh, you are thinking like a white man. As if it's only a white man or white men that think, Africans don't think. So we try to tell them that science is science. It's not Western or Eastern or Northern or Southern. Science is science. Next. Yeah. In the media, yeah, a couple of years ago, the police arrested a goat. In Nigeria, they arrested a goat and they brought the media people. What happened? Oh, some vigilante group were pursuing some thieves and they turned to a goat. Yeah. Yes, and they brought that. So that is it. Because some people will say, oh, they call it benign superstition or whatever. I'm still trying to find out which one is benign. You hang it up there, before you know it, somebody will do something absurd. It was a shame. Next. Yeah. So that's the details. Next. Now, in our justice system, in Nigeria, witchcraft accusation is illegal. Yeah, but because of the fact that these judges are enchanted, they are witchcraft believers, they will misinterpret the law. Instead of trying the accused is tried and jailed. And this happened last year. And it got to a point, they said that the victim, in quote, the person who claimed to be bewitched, should lie on the floor of the court, and that the people who bewitched her should cross over to return their spirit. Yeah, spirit, in a law court. Yeah, so we try to shine a light on that. Yeah, we also have this problem. Yes, people claim that their genitals have disappeared. Yes, and it's a huge problem. It's a huge problem. And if